Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, everybody? Wow, what a beautiful day it is getting into June. Football has started, summer training has started, and it is upon us live and well. The best thing is we get to be outside with some beautiful weather as well. If those of you that coach in the college realm, in the high school realm, you know that this time right now is crucial. It's also probably one of the busiest times for us as coaches, and it feels like the days just move so fast and so fast. But guys, today's episode, super excited to bring on a really good friend of mine. I think you guys are going to love this. He's had a lot of success this year, which is awesome, and we're going to talk about that. But before I introduce him, guys, do us a huge favor. We ask one thing of you. If we provide any value to you, any value whatsoever, if we make it, if we get you to laugh, so if we encourage you, if we entertain you, or we provide some sort of educational content for you, that's something that you can apply, do us a huge favor, share the show. Okay, the show is growing rapidly, and I'm super excited about that and pumped about that, and I'm thankful for that because of you guys sharing the show. So if you get value from this episode, do us a huge favor, share the show. If you're on Spotify, it literally takes 10 seconds to share a show or write a review. If you are on YouTube, because we drop the full-length episodes on YouTube, it takes 5 seconds to subscribe and drop your comments below. We're growing rapidly on YouTube and on Spotify at a really, really, really good rate, so I'm very thankful for that. But do us a huge favor, share the show. So, my man, my friend, a great guy of mine, we talk all the time, Mr. Andrew Behnam. What's up, brother?
This episode is sponsored by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the #1 performance platform for strength coaches around the world. Their software provides coaches with an elevated experience when it comes to program development, data tracking, and staying connected with athletes and clients. Coaches also have access to consultations with TeamBuildr's in-house sports scientists to help them manage and analyze data. Head to teambuildr.com and sign up with promo code TABLE to start your 30-day free trial. That's TeamBuildr, TeamBuildr.com with promo code TABLE to start your free 30-day trial.
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here, Kendrick. Appreciate you asking me to be on the pod.
Yeah, man. I love it. I'm thankful for you to be on. So if you guys don't know Andrew, he is a assistant coach at Elon University. Andrew and I met at TCU, which was a great time, and we really enjoyed it. But he is now the baseball guy at TCU. And if you are on social media at all, you've probably seen his videos. You've probably seen his edits. They are fantastic. And Andrew is he's a good dude. He's awesome. So, hey, man. This past year, you guys had a lot of success. Very unfortunate that you came up short, unfortunately. Kind of a heartbreaking loss. But, you guys had a successful season, and it was your first year there. Kind of what do you attribute your success to? And as somebody that's taken over a team for the first time, how did you approach that?
So I'll start out, Kendrick, by talking about a little bit the transition from TCU into my position now at Elon. I told people when I first started at Elon, it was crazy because I was Zach Dakin's assistant for about a year and a half, and that was a super unique experience for me. But it was me being the #2 on that team, and so I had to do what he had the last call, right? And then October hit, boom, hey, job's open to Elon. Do you want it? Yeah, sure. 3 days later, I'm there. I'm on campus. And I'm standing in front of 45 guys, and they're looking to me for direction. And, being a GA for 2 years, first of all, being an intern at Villanova for 9 months, being a GA for 2 years, and then being Zach's assistant for 2 years, I was always the #2, and it wasn't for the longest time, I wasn't the one calling the shots. Yeah. And so now, 3 days later, I'm moving to North Carolina, 45 guys standing in front of me. I'm the one calling the shots. Hey, coach, what are we doing? All right, let me just ask the head guy. Oh, wait, I am the head guy.
Yeah.
And now I have to I have to call the shots. And it was unique coming in mid-year, but this was honestly, I say this from the bottom of my heart, this group this past year was one of the greatest groups that I've coached. They were coachable in the weight room. They were ready to get after it every single day. Wasn't the only reason why we were successful. Very small piece to it. I'll touch on some of the other things as well, but they made the transition super easy for me. And it was a great experience. We had an awesome year this past year for the situation that we were in, you know. So I was the one calling the shots. It was came in mid-year, had to almost wean them out of the program they were on and start putting them on my program. That took a couple of weeks, and then once January hit, started really the in-season training block, and which is the longest training block of the year. So I saw them for 22 weeks straight, consistently. We trained 3 days a week for 22 weeks, and we saw awesome gains.
Yeah.
And it was awesome to be with that group. Like I said, the group was super coachable, and they made my job super easy. So one of the Kendrick, one of the reasons why I think we were so successful was because we had a lot of uniformity with our coaching staff. Our coaching staff were all on the same page. The coaches saw that. The players saw that. We also had guys that weren't afraid of working hard. We had guys that weren't afraid of working hard. They were always in the cage, always. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
They were always – we just got a brand new indoor facility. They were living in the cage until 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Dudes that couldn't sleep would go into the cage and start taking swings at night. They had 24-hour access to it. They were always at the field at like noon for a 3 o'clock practice, getting extra work. And as soon as class got done, boom, go to lunch, go to practice, start getting early work. Yeah. And then we lifted after practice at 6 o'clock at night. So they were at the field it was almost overkill. They were at the field for like 7 or 8 hours. It was crazy. But, we had really big wins we started off the year playing against Kentucky when they were nationally ranked, beat them 2-1. That was like, welcome to Elon for me.
Let's go.
That was a great experience. And then we ended up playing NC State when they were number 11 in the country. Yeah. We beat them like 14-6 at NC State. It was awesome. And then played Wake Forest. Our biggest one was when we played Wake Forest when they were number 2 in the country. Packed house. We probably had 1,000 to 2,000 people there. It was awesome. Yeah. Electric atmosphere, and we beat them 5-3. And then we beat Campbell, and they're nationally ranked. Yeah. It sucks though, as a mid-major, the RPI, for the mid-major, you have to almost be perfect in the midweek for you to have a good RPI to make a regional. But those are a couple of reasons why I think we were so successful. And like I said, it was a fun group to work with. I'm excited, man, to get back in the summer. We're going to have training. I'm excited to get back in the fall.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, I mean, obviously we're really close and we talk all the time. And so it's so cool to see your success there, especially right away, right? To get there and obviously you're a factor of that, right? But you're not all of that, just like, strength coaches are a factor at places, but they're not the reason why. But it's so cool to like see your success right away. And like, I obviously was rooting for you and obviously like hitting you up and all that stuff. Right. So what, going back real quick from transitioning to always being a number 2 guy, obviously you've learned under some fantastic people, to now being the guy. What would be your advice for those listening that may be in that position or maybe like, hey, I'm transitioning to the number 1 guy for my team? Doesn't have to be baseball. It can be any team. Because right now we know that's the time of the year. People are coming in, they're meeting their team for the first time. How did you approach that? And what are some things that you did really well or things that you think, hey, if I was to do this again, I would maybe do it like this?
One of the first things I thought of is when you first take over as the head guy, you're probably going to be nervous. You're probably going to not think you're able to do it. Number 1, when you have athletes looking at you, you need to fake it till you make it. Regardless of how confident you are in the room, you need to act confident for that 1 hour that you're standing in front of athletes. Because if they see you timid, they're going to be timid.
Yep.
Same thing as a head coach. If he sees, hey guys, you know what, we're playing number 2 Wake Forest, just pack it in, get ready for the weekend. You think the athletes are going to be motivated then? No, he's got to be like, hey, this team is beatable.
Yep.
They've got holes in their lineup. Let's go attack it. And the players are going to get fired up. So you need to take the same approach in the weight room. Fake it till you make it, even if you're not confident, until you get confidence, and then it's go time.
Yeah.
The second thing is understanding that all of the programs you've been a part of, you need to take the things you like and not just copy and paste.
Yep.
So Zach Dakin, one of the best baseball strength coaches in the country, respect the hell out of him. Yep. I'm not going to run the same program as he runs or that I was a part of for a year and a half at TCU. I'm going to take the things I like, take the things I don't like, and make it my own.
Right.
The things that I've been at Millersville, every place that I've been a part of previously, I take the things I like, run with it, and get rid of the things that I don't like, and that's going to be my program. Mm-hmm. And that's the stuff that I know how to coach really well, and make it your own. So that's going to help making you be more comfortable as well. Because if you have a training session that you have movements that you don't really feel comfortable coaching and you programmed them, how confident are you going to be when you're actually on the floor coaching? You need to make sure, they always talk about a minimal viable program. What's the simplest program you can give that you can effectively coach right now? And that's going to help you succeed, and then you can build off of it. You don't need to come in to a full-time job or a GA position where you're running the show and come in with these, this 3 classification model of advanced, foundation plus, foundation. No, you put everyone on the same program, you see how they move, and then make adjustments from there. If you have a kid who is strong enough after week 1 and you can use your coach's eye to tell, you put him in an advanced program. You use your coach's eye, but you start out with a minimal viable program and branch off from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that a lot, because I think it's amazing to learn from great coaches that have been doing it and have shown what right looks like, if you will. And I think that's a huge component of it. And then taking what you like from them and extrapolating it to your own too, I think is extremely important. And then the aspect of like coach where you can coach, right? And so maybe I don't program some dynamic stuff because I don't know how to do it myself. Well, 1, good awareness to know that, but then 2, when you train, you should also do that yourself and practice it. So then when you do implement it in a program, you can actually coach it, teach it confidently, and you can explain what it should feel like or what you should be doing, feeling, etc., because you've then done it yourself. And I think that's extremely important.
And that's a side note too, is one of the most beneficial things that I've been a part of is staff lifts. I advocate for them. We do them at Elon because you have 8 strength coaches lifting at the same time doing the same program. You can talk about it in between sets. Hey, you're not sitting your hips back enough. You can coach each other. Yeah. You can really start to own the program and understand what it feels like to better coach it later that day. We tell our interns all the time right now at Elon, if you want to know, how to effectively coach the program, do it first. And you're going to feel what the athlete is feeling the next day. Yeah. So same thing. You're a new coach. You're new in the field. You're scared about the volume that you have programmed. Why don't you do it yourself? Practice on yourself. And then at the end of the session, you can tell if it was enough program, enough volume or not. Yeah. So that's one thing. But I also go back, Kendrick, talking about a mistake that I made when I was transitioning to Elon. My first thought was exactly what I talked about. Oh, shoot, I need to do exactly what I learned in the past because that's what I'm comfortable with. And so my first instinct was, copy and paste. But you have to understand that it's not the same situation. You don't have the same guys. It's not the same team, right? I
Right.
talk about this with Gabe Mason, our associate strength and conditioning sports performance coach, all the time. The program that you write is dependent on the situation and the team that you have, depending on the time of year. So
Yeah.
the team that I have this past year for my baseball team is not going to be the same program I write next year because it's different guys on the team, especially with the portal these days. It's different guys on the team, different training ages, different situation. We might make an adjustment to our practice plan, and our volumes might go up in practice, which is going to taper off some of the stuff we do in the weight room. So all those factors are going to encompass what I plan on doing next year. And
Well,
it obviously just comes from experience, you know?
yeah, that and like, the other fact. So I mean, I completely agree with you. The other factor to that is also like, because you've trained this group yourself for a year now, next year, like you created the baseline with them, right? So next year you can add things, or you can, do more advanced stuff, if you will, with them if they need it, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a huge component. It's like, how do I get to this really advanced program where my juniors and seniors need minimal instruction? Well, you have to coach them
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years, 3 years prior to, right?
Oh,
Like you
gosh.
have
Yeah.
to build them from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, because that's what everybody wants. Is like they want their juniors and seniors to have autonomy. Hey, here's what
Mm-hmm.
you got. You know how to do X, Y, Z. Cool, go get it done. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the fun stuff, right? Is like
yes,
at
yes,
TCU, I was doing the foundation program, and Zach was in the corner doing super maximal eccentrics with the juniors and seniors,
yeah,
the
yeah,
guys that are ready for it. So
right,
that's, and this is another thing like we talk about at Elon is the long-term athletic development. That's what you want. That's
yeah,
what your goal should be, is to put guys in those classifications and really hone them for 4 years, and develop them
yeah,
for that time they're in college, especially if they come out of high school and they had a really sound strength and conditioning program, and they
yeah,
come in and they're not even a foundational athlete. They move like a foundation plus or advanced athlete, you know,
yeah,
and you can put them in a different classification because their strength numbers are where they should be. They're athletic, and you can classify them maybe as something different, especially, you and I talked about it for the pod, but the transfer portal is crazy these days. It's the wild, wild west, and
yeah.
it's tough with long term athletic development trying to have the long term. It's
Like to
tough
have
with
a
the transfer portal trying to do long term athletic development because you get kids maybe their junior year
yeah,
and they've been on 3 different programs, and you're like, all right, what do I do with this kid now?
yeah. Well, I was literally just about to ask you about that. It's very difficult to have a quadrennial plan or an LTAT approach when, yeah, I mean, I might pick a grad transfer up and he's going to be here for a year, but he's expected to produce right away because he's a grad transfer. He's a senior guy. He's an older guy, so like he knows the game. But from a training philosophy standpoint, like he could be have a training age of a freshman, of a
Mm-hmm.
sophomore, and it's like, whoa,
And
okay.
and and if you're looking for an answer, you're not going to find that from me because we had we 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 have a draft eligible. You have a draft eligible, let's say third baseman. You have a
Yeah,
draft eligible shortstop who player of the year in the conference, All American, but he's a buck 70 soaking wet,
yeah,
and that's not necessarily going to play in the league. Do you try and make his physical qualities better in the weight room, or do you not touch him because he's already really good at the sport?
mm,
And it's something that I've thought about a lot. I still don't have an answer on it. I don't have an answer for it. It's like it's people deeming Mike Trout as tight,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, if you try and make him more mobile, he might not be Mike Trout.
mm,
So people see the limiting factor as the end all be all, but really, I think you need to make a cognizant effort of how do they move in sport, and then see if that's going to affect the limiting factor. Because same thing as the All American.
right,
If he's really good at his sport, do you need to chase a bunch of rabbit holes with him in the weight room if he's already hitting 350?
right,
Scouts are all over him, and he's probably going to get drafted in the top 8 rounds next
right,
year.
right.
You know,
Or are those limiting factors the reason why they are so good at for that? You know, like so good
Exactly.
at their sport.
And that's
Yeah,
what I mean. Like Mike Trout being tight, it might be the reason why he's so good. People
yeah,
deem him as tight, might be the reason why he's so effective on the field.
yeah.
You
And see,
know?
I ask you these hard questions because you're the guy with the answers, like and so I'm like, if there's one person I'm gonna ask, it's Mr. Andrew Behnam because he's gonna have the
No,
answers.
no way. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out. Do you put weight on that kid that's a buck 70, but he might be slower? He might
Yeah,
not hit as well. He might not move as well.
right.
So, these are all things that I think about all the time. I have
How does he
conversations with the
feel
staff at
too?
Elon.
Like and like his confidence. How does he feel? Like because there's
Right.
there's athletes. I mean, we've all seen it, but like there's athletes that maybe he's a buck 70, but he feels great at 180, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe he feels so lethargic at 180. But it's also
Hmm.
like, well, maybe it's because your body's never been that heavy. So if you stay at that weight, you know what I'm saying? There's just so much like
Hmm.
unknown, if you will.
100%. The one thing, Kendrick, I've taken from this past year is, again, I will never have the answers, but I take every year as an experience to learn from that.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm getting on the train more of is how impactful the psychology is behind
Hmm.
performance. If if the athlete thinks it helps, it does help, and that's what you need to. I think that's what coaches need to realize a little bit more of. We're not dealing with robots; we're dealing with human beings.
Hmm.
And if they think that foam rolling is going to be effective, and you don't necessarily believe in foam rolling, you need to let them foam roll because that's what's going to psychologically help them feel more confident to perform on the field. And
Yeah.
so if an athlete feels more confident playing at 180, that's something to take into account. Obviously there's a lot more factors. Where does the head coach want
Sure.
him?
Sure.
Is he slower at 180? And then you can show him the numbers of like, hey, I know you want to be at 180, but you are faster at 175, or
Sure.
let's get you to 176 or 77. Those are conversations to have, but understanding that we're not dealing with robots, we're dealing with human beings who all of those things play a part in it. Things that you might think are eyewash, the athlete might think really help.
Yeah.
And then you throw them a bone every once in a while and let them do that. And they're going to appreciate you for it.
Yeah.
And if it's not harming them, obviously, right? If it's nothing that's going to be detrimental to their performance and you let them do that, they're going to have more buy-in from you and they're going to be more confident for the field.
Yeah.
So what's the harm in doing that?
Mm. No, dude, it's a really good point, honestly. I mean, and if you're, listening and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go try this with my athlete because maybe you have one in mind or whatever, understand probably the best time to start attempting to maybe make some changes or have these conversations is in the off season and not in the in season. I think too many
Mm-hmm.
times coaches will try and do this in the in season because we monitor weight, blah, blah, whatever. But understand that the best time to probably make these changes and to influence the athletes and the coaches and to try things out is going to be in the off season. So if you're in the end season or you got athletes in mind, just be wary of that because just like you said, Andrew, like it could negatively affect performance, and that's not something that you particularly want while we're trying to win, right? So best times is in the off season because you have that time to kind of work and monitor and see how the athlete feels. And I think that's such a huge component of it. The other part with that, Andrew, I think is the communication with the athlete. So like, let's say you're trying to put 10 pounds on a guy, right? A baseball guy. It's one thing to just monitor progress and be like, eat more, eat more, eat more. It's another thing to be like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel when you move? Do you feel slow? Do you feel lethargic? How do you feel when you just squat down, sit up, or stand up? Or like, do you feel mobile? So, like, you just have to have so many more conversations with them in a good way because you're trying to figure out what this is doing or not doing, right? And so maybe it's like, coach, this is the best I've ever felt, and you're like, awesome, right? Like that's the easy button there, but a lot of times we know that's not the truth.
I've I have set the tone with my athletes at the beginning of the year. If I ask you how you feel, don't just say good.
Yeah,
You get that 1,000 times. Hey,
yeah,
how do you feel? I feel good. What does that mean? What do you mean you feel good?
Yeah.
Go deeper.
Yeah.
And that's why I started taking RPEs before training sessions. This is something that coaches can take is if you don't necessarily have the data to, you don't have catapult, you can't see how their body is actually doing performance wise. And you just have to go off of subjective measures. What's your RPE out of 10? 10 being I feel phenomenal, 1 feeling I feel like I'm 6 feet under. How do you feel? And that can kind of give you a gauge of how they're feeling. And then that starts conversation as well. Hey, you just said you're feeling a 6 out of 10 today. What's up? What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, coach, I was staying up late last night, studying for a final, studying for a really hard exam, didn't get much sleep. Okay, great. Let's back off some volume today. Thank you for telling me.
Yep.
And that depends on the athlete. Is it an athlete that you trust, because people can take advantage of that?
Yep.
Need to be aware of who you're talking to. Another thing that I like to do post practice is take RPEs post practice.
Yep.
If people don't have technology, a great way to get subjective measures of arbitrary numbers is, okay, practice was 2 hours long. That's 120 minutes. Now I'm going to take a couple of the guys' RPEs. This kid was 7 out of 10. This kid was 8 out of 10. I'm going to take 7 times 120 times the number of minutes the practice was.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to spit out a number. That number is an arbitrary number just to give me workload.
Yep.
And from there, you can get a sense of how hard the guys thought practice was. What's even more unique, even further, was if you're having trouble with a sport coach and the sport coach doesn't realize they're running these guys into the ground.
Sure.
But you see it as the performance coach, you can have a conversation with the coach and be like, Coach, how hard do you think the practice was out of 10? I thought it was out of 10, I thought it was maybe a 3 out of 10. It wasn't that hard. It definitely wasn't that hard. But the guys are saying it was, they feel like they're in the ground. They just got ran into the ground. You can show them, the head coach, the numbers of, Coach, these guys are feeling really, they're feeling really bad after practice. Might want to make some adjustments. And it's not that easy. There's a lot more conversation that goes on, but it's one thing that you can do. If you don't have tech, it's easy to get subjective measures of how guys are feeling.
So speaking on that, because I want to stay on that, your time you've spent, you were at a D2 level, right? You were at a mid-major, then you were at TCU, which is a P5, and now you're back to a mid-major, not because of your ability or anything of that nature, but it's just kind of the way that the world works in the strength and conditioning world. What are some challenges you face, from a mid-major standpoint that you have the luxury at a P5 level, and what are some things that you have a luxury of at a mid-major level that may have been a challenge at higher levels?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. Something that you had the luxury of at the Power 5 level that you don't necessarily have is just the resources.
Yeah.
You have all of these different resources at a Power 5 level of not only technology, that's an obvious one, force plates, jump mats, 1080s, everything at your disposal that you obviously don't have at a mid-major or a Division II. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's the obvious. But the other part of it is the resources for the athletes in terms of nutrition, in terms of counseling, things like that, academic, mental health. There's still resources at the mid-major level, but not as many as a Power 5.
Yeah.
And that's part of it that you kind of have to combat. Nutrition was huge at TCU, and it was, when the new football staff came in, one of the things they did was place an emphasis on nutrition. And I'm not saying it's the reason why, obviously, but they had a great run in the college football playoffs. And nutrition, I think, is a huge part, something we're trying to work on at Elon, but you just don't necessarily have the resources at your disposal at a mid-major level. And that's fine. But you need to, as a coach, you need to work with what you got. you and I talked about it. The Division II life for me, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because
Yeah, bro.
you learn to do a lot with a little.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to. We had one jump mat and one timing gate,
Yeah.
and hey,
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
don't necessarily have all the tech at Elon, but we make it work without a doubt. We make it work, and it's effective. And we have some great coaches on our staff who have great minds. Of okay, we don't have this many trap bars. Instead, we're going to do this. Or hey, we don't have 4 timing gates. That's fine. We'll just break them up into stations, and we'll have a third of the group go to that corner of the field, a third of the group go to that corner of the field, and then a third of the group on the lasers, and we'll just rotate all 3 stations.
Yeah.
So you make it work. One thing that's really unique about the mid-major level versus a Power 5 is, you and I talked about it. Everyone, I think, should be at the mid-major level because you appreciate what you have. You're just appreciative. The athletes are appreciative. The athletes at Elon are awesome, and they're thankful to have snacks at the nutrition station. They're thankful to have a brand new weight room that we just got, which is awesome.
Yeah.
They're just appreciative of the resources that we have, and like I said, we make it work, and it's a great situation. So
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, we were talking about it before, obviously, but like, when we're programming, we always talk about like a constraints based program, right? And the realest way to understand what constraints you have is, fortunately and unfortunately, to be at a place where those constraints are alive and well, right? And it's amazing to be at, big universities and to have 35, 40, 50 racks where you don't have to worry about, hey, being done on time. You can go 10 minutes over. It's not a big deal. You don't have to worry about, we don't have enough med balls. We don't have sleds. We don't have chain. Like, you don't have to worry. Like, you don't have to worry about that stuff, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. And like, I love it as well. But it's also very alive and well, very real when you are at a mid-major and you have holes in a floor, or you train out of a student rec center and you have 4 racks, or you have one pair of timing gates and you have 4 teams to do. And I mean, it's brutal, it's difficult, it's fun, but it's also very challenging. But like you said, you learn to make it work, and that's as real of constraints based as you can get. Because if you have everything at your disposal, you understand the concept, but you don't understand the application, because you're like, well, yeah, of course I've got 4 pairs of timing gates and 2 force stacks, and everybody wears GPS because we've been doing it for 6 years. Like, it's now a status thing. It's now a routine thing.
right.
Whereas if you're trying to do that at other levels and you just get tech and you just get this and you now have this, or you don't have any of that, it's very difficult for people to understand the constraints based concept when you may not have any constraints at your fingertips, if that makes sense.
Well, that's the thing too, is if that's the only thing you've known, and then the coaching world is ever changing, if you, for whatever reason, get put in a situation where you have nothing, good luck. Because it's going to, Division II level, like I said, one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, because you're on the floor for 10 hours. You have a men's golf team that's coming in from 7 to 7:45, and you have to get them done because women's soccer is coming in at 7:45. And if you're late with men's golf, women's soccer is going to be delayed, and then every team after that is going to be delayed. You need to make sure you're checking all your boxes with men's golf. You're getting your field work in. You're getting your weights in. You're still checking the box with the 45 minutes that you have, while still making sure you get them in and out on time. And then you have the next team, and then you have the next team. And it's awesome because you're on the floor all the time. I had relationships with 300 athletes at Millersville when I was there for 2 years, because it was great, because I had every single team. I was either head or assisting with every single team. My boss and I, Kyle Regensburg, who's still at Millersville right now, it was me and him. One head strength coach, one GA,
Yeah.
18 sports.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome experience. Gabe Mason, Division II,
Yep.
experience. Brian Shikuski, also Division II experience on our staff. We have a lot of guys at Elon who have been at the Division II level, and we bond over it for sure. But it's also like, man, what a great time, because you're more thankful for what you have at Elon.
Yeah.
We have so much at Elon compared to what we had at the Division II level.
Yeah,
It's
bro.
awesome. Yeah, 100%. But you know what, though, Kendrick, you learn to make it work at the Division II level. You have to. You have no choice. You have no choice. I will never forget this. My GA position started off at Millersville. My first week at Millersville was week 1 of the football schedule. We were playing on a Thursday night. We were playing week 0. Week 0, Millersville was playing away at a school in Virginia. My boss, Kyle, had to travel with football. So the first week this was the second week I think I was at Millersville. Second week, hey, Andrew, I'm going with football to Virginia. It's you. The whole facility is up to you.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah.
And so for 3 days, the second week, I just got done an internship at Villanova 4 weeks ago. And then 4 weeks later, my boss was going to Virginia with the football team, and it's just me for 3 straight days.
Yeah.
You have no choice but to figure it out.
Yeah.
I can't go make a phone call because I'm the only CSCS certified in the building. You got to make it work.
Yeah.
Sink or swim.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And I'm not saying that I was perfect. I messed up a lot.
Yeah.
But you learn from your mistakes, and that's how you get better.
But I also think like having that experience and messing up there is a great thing, right? Like there's opportunities in our careers where it's a growth spot, right? Where you're like, I'm growing here as a coach. And what I mean by that is I may not have all the tech available, but I'm growing as a coach. I'm not making mistakes. I'm being better with time. I'm understanding how to program better. I'm understanding how to run 10 different teams and program for 15 different teams. And it's like, yeah, you may not get the tech at that point in time. You may not, have some of these other things, but you're like, my ability to coach, to run things, to be confident, to, hey, this is what we're doing. Here's X, Y, and Z. Do I have any questions? And command and control the floor grows exponentially there because it's reps, right? Like it's reps.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's you and 30 athletes by 10 teams in every day, you get a lot of reps, you know?
100%. Especially what we did my second year was we ran teams on the 30-minute mark. And
Sure.
so it was like a what people do in the private sector. It's you have groups coming in every 30 minutes. Hey, you're going to start on the field. You're going to go on the field from 7 to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, you're going to go in the weight room, and another team is going to go on the field from 8 to 8:30.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, from 7:30 to 8, they're going to be on the field, while team 1 is in the weight room.
Yeah.
And then team 1 finishes up in the weight room at 8 o'clock. Team 2 that was on the field goes to the weight room at 8 o'clock, and then team 3 starts on the field.
Yeah.
And so you talk about keeping teams on time, right? But talk about programming as well. Talk about programming because you got to schedule 30-minute sessions. And then another thing as well, Kendrick, that I learned at Elon, which I already knew being at TCU and having to manage 45 guys on a roster, but you can't have everyone using all the GHDs because maybe there's only 4 GHDs and there's 45 guys. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
If you program 2 exercises and you don't even realize it, this is why I like to schedule my programs out weeks before I actually give it to my teams, because then you can go over and review it a second and third time realizing like, oh shoot, I just programmed 2 exercises that both involve using the bench.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to back to back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then I'm not going to be able to do that. because if I have, for instance, if you have a dumbbell bench scheduled with a, tricep dip, let's say, or like a hamstring bridge, and you have to put your feet on the bench. Well, that's not going to work because when ones are on the dumbbell bench, how am I going to also have another group on the bench as well? So it's things that you learn from not only experience, but looking over your program a second and third time. By the third time, you're like, what was I thinking programming that?
Yeah.
And then you go back to the drawing board and make adjustments and say, can I get this done with 45 guys?
Yeah.
What you accomplish with a 9-man tennis team is not going to be the same with what you get accomplished with a 40-man baseball team.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy, when we think about that, because when you're an intern or a GA or a second assistant, to some of these teams, you see it happening, but you haven't gone through the thought process yourself, right? And that's where the growth occurs. Like, kind of like you alluded to at the very beginning of this, is that transition between I'm always assisting to this is my team now. Like
1,000%.
I'm the guy.
1,000%.
And the deliberate planning that now you have to take the time out of your day to deliberately think about this, plan about it, visualize it, see it. Does this make sense? And when you get to know your team, you get to see them 3 to 5 guys that are going to cause everything to maybe not go the way you want it to. So like, I'm going to pay extra attention to these guys at this point in time because these are the 3 to 5 guys or girls that are going to be slacking, taking a little bit more time, and they're going to ruin the flow, right? Which at a Division II level, or where you're the one doing everything, you have to think about these things, right? Like legitimately, like when I was there and we trained out of a student rec center and had 4 racks and 2 med balls, and you have 7-10 teams I'm programming for. It's like, well, I need to deliberately think about this. Who are the people that I need to keep my eye on and be right next to, because they're going to slow everything down, because 90% of them are going to be okay. But it's the 10% that you're going to be like, dude, come on. Like, how many sets do you have left? And they're like, oh, I'm on set 2. It's like, well, we're on set 4. Like, where are you at? Or like they're always the first one done. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't seem right to me. Like there's all that stuff that you pick up on as you get better. But
it's also like talking to ATs, talking to the head coaches. Not only the programming stuff, but that's also experience that you get, not necessarily when you're a number 2 or you're a GA, is you don't get the one-on-one meetings with the head coach that you're supposed to have every other day or bi-weekly or weekly.
And how critical was that for you this year? Like
it was super important. Knock on wood, we didn't have that many we didn't have any injuries really this past year. Knock on wood. It took an army, because one person, AT, strength coach, skill coach, it takes one person to ruin that.
Yep.
And it takes an army to maintain the health of a team. So those weekly meetings with our staff were crucial, because again, something you don't get as number 2 is I was sending reports to our head coach every week. Here's body weights, here's sprint times, here's vertical jump, here's approach jump, here's our med ball overhead throw. And listen, not expecting him to dissect every single data point that I sent him.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to make sure that the data that I sent him was clean, easy to read. I had conditional formatting. Everything was organized. And it started conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, why is this athlete down 4 pounds from last week? Oh, well, him and I talked about it. He wasn't eating well, his stomach bug. Oh, I didn't know that. The head coach goes, I didn't know that. And there you go, starts conversation. Maybe the AT chimes in, and it really does take an army of. I also sent weekly reports. Every single day at the end of the session, I would write down notes. I would go back to my computer and I would log notes.
Yeah.
Who was good in the session, who seemed really upbeat, who didn't seem like they came in with the right attitude. Did I overhear one of the athletes talking to one of their buddies at the rack saying how they just had a fight with their girlfriend the night before?
Mm.
You know, that's stuff that I'm maybe recording on the notes. And that weekly report of the session, along with the data, is being sent to the head coach in preparation for our meeting. And then we talk about that. Those are things that you don't get when you're a GA or a number two.
Mm.
And those are things that you need to be ready for when you do take that full-time job and you are in charge of teams, of the communication, the 4 coactives like we talk about,
Yep.
talking to sport coaches, talking to sports med, talking to team doctors, all things that you don't do when you're a number two, but you're being thrown into it. You're number one. Everyone's looking at you. How was he in the weight room? Well,
Yeah.
was he working hard? Is he getting faster? You can look at all these things, and it also covers your butt too, because when there was a story one time, one of my mentors told me a story of they recruited a junior college player, and over the course of the year, the head coach went up to the strength coach and said, "Hey, he's getting slower. Why is he getting slower?" And the strength coach said, "Okay, he's not getting slower. That's just your eye. Here's the numbers to prove it." And it showed the progression over the course of the training block, over the course of the semester, that he wasn't in fact getting slower, and there was the data to prove it. And it's a little example like that can prove that the numbers not only give you a sense of if your program is working or not, but it also covers your butt in terms of player health.
Yeah. So we have player health 1, obviously, performance measures 2, right? Because I think we've all ran into that instance, if you will, where somebody sees something that they believe, not that they're wrong or wrong for what they saw, but when you have that objective data to say, hey, coach, look, I get what you're saying. Maybe they just weren't feeling the best. Maybe you caught them at the wrong time, whatever. But here's the data to show you, like, we are making progress. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, by the way, I sent it to you for the last 12 weeks and we've sat down every single week. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing I've noticed a lot when you become a full-time coach is how much your opinion actually does matter.
Mm-hmm.
From a head coaching standpoint, from an assistant coaching standpoint, and from the AT standpoint, there's so many more people that value you and your role and that lean on what you say. And it's very apparent, especially when you have good relationships with your coaches and they ask you, what do you think? How have they been? Have you noticed, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Now, you do have to be careful what you say at the same time, right? Because if you're always running and telling them every little thing, right, that's something that you need to consider. What is the information they actually need to know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And talking about meetings with head coaches, sport coaches weekly, what does yours kind of look like? I do one with mine weekly as well. I talk to them pretty much daily. I'm seeing them every day, saying what's up, hugging, high fives, handshakes. But then we have like a weekly formal meeting. We have so many like informal meetings. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Practice, lifting, passing them, just going up and chalking it up and saying what's up. But then we do have like a formal meeting, right? So, what does your formal meeting kind of look like? Um, what do you share with them? What do you not? Maybe you kind of told us a little bit about that already, but like, what does that look like?
Well, like you said, the informal meetings are every day. I see
Yeah.
them at practice. I encourage them to
Yep.
come to my lifts.
Yeah.
Some performance coaches aren't so keen on the skill coach coming into the weight room. I love it. I want you to see the guys in this environment because you only see them on the field. I want you to see me in this environment. I want you to see the athletes in this environment.
Yeah.
And I also think it helps get buy-in because the athletes are like, "Oh shoot, coach is here." You
Yeah.
know? It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's here with us.
Yep.
One of our teams at Elon, the head coach trains with that team.
I love it.
And it's awesome.
I love it.
I love it.
I love
And
it.
the guys love it.
Yeah.
So I encourage my head coach, Coach Kennedy, to come into the weight room whenever he wants, as much or as little as he wants. Don't have a problem with it. We have informal meetings at practice, prior to practice.
Yeah.
When they come in the weight room, obviously we'll talk, and then we meet once a week. It'll be Coach Kennedy, it'll be myself, our athletic trainer, and our academic advisor will all be in the meeting.
Yep.
And we start out by going around the room and talking about our notes for the week. So athletic trainer will start what he has on the menu. I will chime in and say what modalities we're doing to combat the injury in the weight room. He can't do bilateral, the AT says, and then I chime in, yep, we're doing unilateral stuff instead. And then I'll say my piece. And at the same time, the head coach is chiming in during all this, right? It's not just a lecture. It's a conversation. I will chime in, and then I start about my piece. Every day I had notes. Here's the data. Here's the weights that we talk about, the body weights. And then the academic advisor will go and talk about if we need to change any scheduling, if lift at 6 o'clock needs to be pushed to 5 o'clock because they have a banquet at 7 o'clock at night and they're not going to be able to shower and get dinner in time.
Sure.
This kid has tutoring at 7 o'clock, so he's going to have to come to the weight room a little earlier on Thursday because he'll miss tutoring if he starts at 6 o'clock with the rest of the team. So these are things that are talked about within the meeting. And I love the meetings because it puts everyone on the same page, right?
Yes.
Pitching coach is in on the meetings. Associate head coach is in on the meetings as well. Everyone gives their 2 cents. Hey, this player was feeling a little run down. Okay, we're going to back off in the weight room. Maybe the head coach says, all right, we'll back him off a little bit on the field. And ultimately, that's the goal, right, is to get a high-performance model of that high-low system. That's everyone's goal. I think that's every performance coach's goal is to get the head coach bought in on a high-performance model and to really buy in on the high-low model of it of, coach, here's what we're doing. Maybe not necessarily here's what we're doing in the weight room. You should mimic it on the field, but what are you guys doing on the field? Let me mimic it in the weight room. That's what it needs to be, right? And getting them to buy in of not having yardage through the roof every single day. My head coach is awesome about it. In season, our volumes go down. A lot of college baseball, we play Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and our Thursday practices and our Monday practices are a little lighter because they're right before a game, day before the game. Our Wednesday practices will be a little bit more volume because it's the farthest day away from Friday, which is our biggest game of the week. So our hardest practice will be on Wednesday. Monday we'll usually have off, and then sometimes it gets flipped. Sometimes we'll have off on Wednesday and we'll practice on Monday. And so it's just part of the conversation of trying to get them to buy into the high performance model. You and I could talk about it all day, but that's the goal, is the high-low system on the field, in the weight room, player health through the roof. So
it's I love what you said there, and for those that don't know, to add to Andrew's point, because I agree with him, is the reason why we want to structure it that way is to provide recovery for the athletes, right? Like, we are performance coaches. We are trying to get them to perform the best. And we know that rest and recovery are massive drivers for performance. And so if you don't know what the high-low system is, go look at Charlie Francis. If you don't understand that, go read. But the reason behind that is to help facilitate recovery for the athletes, not because we don't want them to practice hard. It is solely based upon so the athlete can recover and consolidating stressors
So when we do difficult things at practice, we're doing difficult things in the weight room. And then when we're doing lighter things at practice, we're doing easier stuff in the weight room to help facilitate recovery. If you don't know what that is, go read. But that's why and what Andrew's talking about as a high-low system and the people that we're referencing. I love the fact of the people that are in your meetings and everybody on the same page. I think that's fantastic because it makes the reasons for changes are easier to understand. Then I think that's where a lot of coaches struggle is like they may not know and understand the why behind the what. So if an athlete needs to come in or training this week needs to adjust or whatever, it can be frustrating at times when we're like, well, why? And nobody seems to have an answer. But when you understand that, right? And I laugh because it's so true. Like if you've ever been a coach, you know this, but when you understand, hey, we have a banquet at 7, so we need to be done so they can shower, you're like,
Yep.
cool, I get that.
Yep.
Or so and so needs to come in early, cool, I get that, right? When you're just like, this week it's at 5, next week it's at 7, the week before after that it's at 3, and you're like, why all the changes? Like, and nobody seems to have anything behind that. It's like, so if you're a coach, always ask that question, why? Not in a demeaning way or ask how come if you want that tends to land a little bit better. But if you aren't having a weekly meeting with your coaching staff, with your athletic trainers, with academics, with people from a psychological standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, like you need to be having those because I think it helps so much. I've been in staffs where we do that, and it's so insightful and helpful, and you can communicate, and everybody's voice is heard, and you can say, here's why, here's what, here's why, and it literally makes things so much easier, and you feel like you're a staff.
And you might learn something that you didn't know in the meeting.
Oh,
and and then that might, all right, noted, here we go. And you might learn something that you didn't know. And the athletic trainer says something, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool, I'll write that down. Head coach says something you don't know, write it down. Academic advisor, same thing. Pitching coach, associate head coach, whatever. It's all things you're learning. You're gathering information to make sure the athlete is at the forefront of everything, right? Yep. 4 coactives, we talk about it all the time. Player health is right at the center. Yep. And it goes back and starts with those team meetings, the staff meetings. Yeah. And it's huge.
I think there's
a difference maker.
I really believe that, honestly. And I'm not one to advocate for me. I mean, I don't mind meetings, but I don't need to be meeting always. But if we meet once a week and I see you every single day, like, cool, let's talk about that at our formal. I also think it's a great. What's up?
Go ahead, Kendrick. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I also think it's a great time for you to share your ideas, right? Hey, I was looking at X, Y, and Z, whether it's tech, whether it's a training thing, logistics. Hey, speaking from a nutritional standpoint, we have this big. We're leaving next week on Wednesday. We're going to be not coming back till Sunday. Can we talk about the logistics of that real quick? Are we going to lift on the road? Are we not? Are we going to eat?
100%.
What are we eating? Who's ordered? Like, you can kind of fill a lot of those gaps at the same time. And maybe like your Dobo or whoever's doing that. And that's awesome. And that's a great place for them to say, hey, look, like we've got this all done. Here's the itinerary. Here's this, here's that, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, cool. What are we wearing? Like, there's just so many other questions you can ask. And you can put your ideas out there. Hey, I was thinking about this. Do you think we could fund XYZ? Do you think we could implement XYZ? Do you think, hey, coach, out of your experience, whatever, right? And I think that's a great opportunity.
And going back to what you said before, it's important if you are able to, if you're a strength coach who doesn't have that many teams and you are able to, going to practice.
Oh, dude.
Difference maker. Yeah. Going to practice, difference maker. I can't tell you the amount of times where, for whatever reason, I was at practice, had something planned in my program, was at practice, and goes, all right, I think I need to make an adjustment.
Yep.
And then make an adjustment to my workout. Because, they're going to lift right after practice, which is ultimately what you want, right? You want your skill to be done first and then have them train right after they've done their skill, which is the most important thing. Yeah. and I've had to make adjustments to it.
Yeah.
I've had to make adjustments to their lift because of the things they've been doing in practice sometimes, and it's just adapting on the fly. And if you
Yeah.
didn't go to practice, you wouldn't know that stuff. So if you were able to, I suggest you make an appearance at practice and see what your athletes are doing. If you don't know much about the sport you have in the weight room, going to practice is one of the best ways to learn.
Yeah. I think I might catch flag. I think going to practice should be almost mandatory.
Right.
Like I really believe that. Like I'm so serious when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
For the reasons that you just said.
Yep.
Honestly, you get to see your athletes in the sport that they're there to play, right? Um, and you get to talk to the coaches. You get to see the coaches. You get to see the practice plans. You get to see athletes. You get the vibe of practice. You get the vibe of, when they get their butts chewed or when they're doing really well, or you get to go in and play with them. Honestly,
Yep.
honestly, it's so crazy. Like when you go to practice, there's a different tone when they're like, "Oh, the strength coach is here," right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's different. It's a different tone. It's just like when the head coach comes into the weight room. Oh, the head coach is here. It's like they
Yep.
perk up. Like people are watching them now. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's so crazy. Like how that contrast happened. I'm a huge fan of being at practice.
I
I
love
go
it.
to every single practice. Um, and I'm a huge fan of it. If you have tech, I think you should be there because you're running the tech. You're looking at all that. You're capturing all that data and stuff, and hopefully relaying that to your athletes. And here's how many calories you need to eat. Here's all this other stuff. But I think if you're going to be a coach on that team and you're going to be fully embedded, you should be at practices. You should travel. You should be at games. You should, do all those things. I think it's extremely important. I really, really, really do. I really do.
Yep. I agree. 1,000%. It should be mandatory.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's tough because people, oh, my time. Yeah, I agree with you. But
Well, it's also tough too. If some people have 6 or 7 teams, they're not able to. But I think if you have 1 or 2 teams, no
oh,
excuse why you shouldn't be.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. So, but Andrew, brother, man, we could sit here and talk for hours because we've done it several times before.
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, yeah. Dude, I just want to say, thank you for your time, man. Obviously I love you and I love what you're doing. But I obviously wish you guys nothing but the best. But dude, really honestly, like appreciate you and your time hopping on. Love to see the success you guys have. Where can people find you online?
So people can find me Twitter, AJ Benham1, and then Instagram, AJ Benham1. Jay is my middle name, Jacob, but people call me Andrew. And AJ Benham1 is my handle on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
I try and put out content 1 to 2 times a week on Instagram, and then I'll pass it over to Twitter as well.
Yeah.
And just try and put out some good content for people. But man, Kendrick, I appreciate you letting me on this pod, man. You're doing a good thing by putting some good content out with this podcast. You've been absolutely blasting things off here on Instagram with
Yeah.
this podcast. So you're doing a good thing, man. I appreciate you.
We're growing, bro. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot. Yeah, guys, if you don't follow Andrew, you should. Okay, he puts out really good stuff. His videos are super high quality. Whether he does them or somebody else does them for him doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, he puts out really good stuff. Yeah. He puts out really good stuff for real. Give him a follow. He's a great dude. Reach out to him. Seriously. I love talking to him. I talk to him as much as I can. Give him a hard time if you can. Okay. He loves it. But anyways, bro, appreciate you. Appreciate your time. And guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Do us a huge favor. Share the show if you learned something, if you thought it was valuable, if you got entertained, educated, where you thought, man, I'm going to do that with my athletes. I should start implementing that meeting. I should bring this stuff. I should collect data. I should do X, Y, and Z, W, whatever it may be. If you got something from this episode, do us a huge favor, share the show. We would appreciate it very much. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one.